We are here with Paul Tuttle to go over common issues for low-income taxpayers. Paul, if you'll go to the next slide. Before we get started, I need to go over a few important reminders. First, this presentation is being live streamed. Questions will be taken at the end if time permits and answered live. If you're watching at a library, you may ask or submit your question to the library staff. If you're watching via Zoom, please submit questions in the Q&A section. If you're watching via Facebook, please submit questions in the comments section. Please note that the comments are public and accessible by anyone during and after the presentation is over. If you'll go to the next slide. Please note that the information provided in this presentation does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials are for general information purposes only. No viewer of this video should act or refrain from acting based on information provided in this presentation without first seeking legal advice from counsel in the relevant jurisdiction. If you need assistance finding legal help in Louisiana, please go to the Find Legal Help page on the LSBA homepage. Further, the LSBA's inclusion of a program is not to be deemed a statement or an endorsement of the views expressed therein by the LSBA or any member of the LSBA. Speakers on LSBA programs were carefully selected for their knowledge, but neither the LSBA nor the speaker warrant that the presentations or materials were free of errors or will continue to be accurate. Statements in the presentations and their materials should be verified before relying on them. Opinions expressed are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect opinions of the LSBA, its section, or committees. Views expressed are those of the authors and contributors only. All right, if you'll go to our next slide. So our presenter today is Paul Tuttle. He is the director of the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic at Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. Southeast Louisiana Legal Services is a nonprofit law firm dedicated to providing hope, dignity, and justice to Louisiana's low-income residents by providing free legal assistance to low-income people on a variety of civil legal issues. And if you'll go to the next slide. We do have information, so for the most part, Southeast Louisiana Legal Service is in 22 parishes, but Paul is here with the Low Income Taxpayer Clinic, which is a statewide program. So we've got both the legal aid providers here to be able to get you in touch with him. It's Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, Acadiana Legal Services as well. We go to the next slide. I'll turn it over to you, Paul. Thank you so much for being here today.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I just want to clarify that I am with Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, but unlike the rest of my firm, the tax clinic is a statewide project. I do help people in the northern and western parts of the state. And right now I am the only tax clinic in Louisiana. So if you're up in Shreveport or Monroe, you would want to get in touch actually with us here at Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. And we have, I believe, a toll-free number. You can get in touch with us on our website. And I will give you the toll-free number later on if you need that. So today we're going to talk about a timely topic. Right now we're in the middle of tax season, maybe getting towards the end of tax season. And we're going to talk about some common issues for low-income taxpayers. These are issues that I see all the time with my clients, and that may be of interest to you. And also, a lot of this is also of interest to any taxpayer, not just low-income taxpayers. So the things we're going to talk about today are tax preparers, mainly finding a good tax preparer and avoiding the bad ones. And identity theft, which can be a related topic. That's when somebody steals your identity and files tax returns or does other things using your identity. Then we're going to talk about the Earned Income Tax Credit. This is one of the biggest credits that most people, most families would get on their tax return. It can result in a sizable refund, but you have to make sure that you're eligible for this credit, and And that, yeah, we'll talk about the eligibility for it because you don't want to get one of these refunds and then find out later you're not eligible for it and you have to pay it back. And then lastly, we'll talk about collection alternatives with the IRS. This is if you end up owing money to the IRS, what can you do? Supposing that you don't have enough money to pay off the entire liability at the same time. Luckily, there are several collection alternatives that the IRS allows, and I'll talk about those. So tax preparers. Unfortunately, a lot of my time is spent amending and correcting information that was put on returns by tax preparers here in Louisiana. Tax preparers are not regulated by the state of Louisiana. They don't need to get any kind of special license or anything like that in order to put themselves out to the public as being tax preparers. So somebody saying that they're a tax preparer might well not know anything about what they're doing. So this is different from a lot of other states where it's more of a regulated industry, but here we have a lot of people that just put out a sign saying they're a tax preparer and they get into business. So the problem with this is that we have a lot of what I call scam tax preparers. These are people that are willing to put false information on your return in order to increase your refund. And the reason they do that is because they're going to take a part of that for themselves. The problem with that is that if you receive one of these refunds that you weren't supposed to get and the IRS examines your return or asks for more information, you're the person that's going to be responsible for it since it's your tax return, not the tax preparer. And if you get a refund that you shouldn't have gotten, you're going to have to pay it back, not the tax preparer. So, I mean, putting false information on a tax return is a crime, but it happens all the time. But it is a serious thing and it's something that you want to avoid. So you need to review your tax return before it's filed. And these days, that's a little difficult because we now have electronic filing where something is sent over the computer. But if you're with a legitimate tax preparer, they should be printing out your tax return that they're going to send out. And you should be having a chance to look at it and ask any questions that you might have about it. And that tax preparer's name should be on the tax return at the end with their contact information. We have a problem with ghost preparers, what we call ghost preparers. These are people that say that they're preparing your return, but they don't put their name on it and they file the return as though you were filing it yourself without any help. So the IRS doesn't know who they are, who put this information on the return. They're going to assume that it was you. So we call them a ghost preparer because they're behind the scenes. You can't really tell who they are, but they're the ones doing the actual return. And like I said, if you receive a fraudulent refund, they're promising you a lot of money and it's tempting, but you could run into problems. And then we're talking about having to pay back refunds with interest and penalties. And we're talking about possible, criminal investigation. It's not very common with just a fraudulent refund, but it could happen. It is technically against the law. And then we have some fraudulent tax preparers that are really out there and they might just go ahead and steal your identity. I mean, you're giving them your name and address and social security numbers and maybe the social security numbers of everybody in your family. So they might go ahead and start filing crazy returns and getting the refunds just sent to their bank account using your identity. So this is something that I also see too. So you really want to be careful when you're picking a tax preparer to make sure that they are a legitimate tax preparer that knows what they're doing and is doing the correct thing. So these are some signs that you have a bad tax preparer and you should run. You should go the other way. You should get your documents back from them and not allow them to file a return for you. If they say that they're going to take a percentage of your refund, like say they're going to say, I take 20% of your refund, whatever it is, that really gives them an incentive to puff up your refund with false information so that they can get more. So they're actually not allowed to do that. They're supposed to look at how difficult your return is, how much information, how much different forms they're going to have to use, and then they should quote you a set fee based on the difficulty of the forms. So if the tax preparer is, maybe you've met them online, maybe you've applied for services online. If they just say, hey, give me your name and social security number, and they don't ask for any other documentation, that is a very bad sign. Obviously, when you're doing a tax return, you want to have W-2s showing your employment income, 1099s, which shows various other types of income, maybe from Social Security or your own business. There's all sorts of tax papers that you're getting in the mail, and the tax preparer obviously should be asking you for this documentation. If they don't seem to care about it, that means they're making things up, which is not a good sign. If he or she wants you to sign a blank or incomplete return, or in this day of electronic filing, what they might want to do is say, hey, sign this authorization to file electronically on your behalf without ever showing you a return. Even, maybe it's the first thing they ask you to do when you go into the office or apply for services online. You should not sign any kind of authorization for them to do anything until you've seen the return that they prepared and you're satisfied that it's legitimate. If your preparer refuses to sign the return with you, and I talked about ghost preparers, so this is also illegal. If they prepare a return for you and they're getting paid to do it, they need to sign that return and put their information on that return. And another big thing is the preparer might want your refund to go into an account under their name. So they'll say, hey, the refund will come to me, I'll take out my fee, and then I'll give you the rest. Well, this is a dangerous situation because they can take the entire thing and not give you anything. Or they might use, in future years, they might use that authorization to keep getting your refund sent into their bank account. So sometimes preparers have something they call, a loan. They say, hey, it's going to take a couple of weeks for you to get this refund. How about I give you the money now in the form of a loan, and then when the refund comes, I'll have it put into my bank account, and that'll pay off the loan. You really want to avoid this if possible because you're going to get less money because obviously they're charging you for this service and this loan and interest and all that sort of stuff. But also you're giving up control over your refund. It's going into their bank account. And if they steal your refund, it's very difficult to, do anything about it. You might have to file like a civil lawsuit in court against that tax preparer, and good luck with serving them with papers, because a lot of times these people have temporary offices or they're online, and you're not really sure where to find them in person to serve them with legal documents. So if you can wait for your refund to come directly to you, to be mailed to you, or to go directly into your account, then you definitely want to do that to keep some control over your refund. So, if you have a simple return and you think you're able to do it, maybe you just have some employment income and you don't have any dependents, you can use, software that's available for pretty low prices. I can't really give names of them, but I think they're, easily available online if you do a search for tax software. The IRS also has its own filing software at its website, www.irs.gov. And low-income taxpayers can file electronically for free there. You can look for certified tax preparers listed on the IRS website. This will tell you that people, are certified with the IRS and probably a better chance that they are legitimate if they're on that list. You can check the Better Business Bureau online. You put those, go to that website and put in this person's name to see if they're have had any complaints against them in the past. I would recommend just doing a general Google search on somebody that wants to prepare your returns. You get some Yelp reviews, you get other reviews. You might find out that the person was arrested for tax fraud. You can find out all kinds of interesting things with just a general Google search. And lastly, if your preparer is an attorney or CPA attorney, you can check the Louisiana State Bar Association website, lsba.org, and they have a list of lawyers there, and they tell you whether that person is in good standing or not. So you would want to find that out. And then I always tell all my clients to go to VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. These are professionals that volunteer their time to help low-income people prepare their tax returns. And they can go back for the last 3 years. There's a 1-800 number to call here in Louisiana, 1-800-906-9887, because there's all different programs and all different times and dates that they're doing their programs across the state. So you really want to call that 1-800 number, tell them where you are and find out what programs are near you. If you're 60 years or older, you might want to call your local AARP. They also help older Americans with their tax returns, and there's a 1-800 number there. Well, 1-888-227-7669, and they can tell you what AARP programs are available near you. So we talked about this a little bit with tax preparers, but identity theft has been on the rise over the past several years and really kind of exploded during the pandemic years. I've even been on calls with Justice Department lawyers. These are the government lawyers that kind of go after identity theft perpetrators. And they were saying that there's, gangs that were once involved in drugs that are now mainly involved with filing false tax returns because they can make just as much money and it's a lot cleaner and simpler, and more difficult to get caught. So we're talking about, millions and millions of, well, I don't know the exact number, but we're talking about a lot of criminals out there that are constantly, online searching for your ID information, maybe buying it from other people that have stolen it. And the reason they want it is to file a false tax return. If they can get a $10,000 refund with each return and then they file, 1,000 returns, that's a lot of money. So how do you avoid having your information stolen? Well, the biggest thing is your social security number. You got to safeguard it. If someone calls you up and says, hey, I'm from the IRS and I need you to confirm your social security number, don't do it. Don't ever give it over the phone or internet to somebody that has contacted you or somebody that you don't really know. If somebody's saying that they're from the IRS and they need to talk to you, you can say, okay, well, I'll call them directly and hang up and go to the irs.gov website and get the phone number and call up directly and find out, are you really trying to get in touch with me or are you trying to do this? Because the IRS will not generally call. They will send letters. The IRS is very old fashioned. They use snail mail. They notify people by mail of any information or, actions that they need to take. And they definitely do not call or text or email and say, hey, you need to make a payment. You owe money. You need to make a payment right now. We're sending the police over. This is something that is done to create kind of a feeling of anxiety and panic that I have to do something right now. I don't have time to check this out. I gotta, send these people this money that they're saying that I need to send to them. But they do that on purpose. They create that sense of panic. But the IRS is not going to send the local police or sheriff after you about tax liability. So if someone calls you up saying that, you could just hang up on them. You want to check your bank accounts, make sure there's no unauthorized deposits. You want to check your credit report. You can get a free credit report every year online. You should go ahead and do that. Make sure nobody's opening up any credit card accounts or taking out loans or doing anything else that you don't recognize. If you get mail with your name and address on it, I even when it's just my name and address, I tend to rip it up before throwing it away. So that's not easy for people to get my address. And definitely if you have mail with your social security number on it, you definitely want to shred that and before throwing it away. So you get calls from scammers posing as IRS agents and your call identification might show up as IRS because they have the ability to disguise where they're calling from, make it look like a different number, make it look like the IRS. So it's not, just because your phone says IRS and someone is saying that they're IRS is not necessarily true. And these people are trying to do one of two different things. Either they're saying that you need to send them money and they, it's probably pretty suspicious the way they want it, like gift cards or credit cards or something like that. But then they also might just be looking to get your social security number and your identification so that they can steal your identity. And so they might be saying, oh, you're going to get a big refund, but I need to confirm your social security number. Can you give it to me? And they might have information about you that they've gotten online. They might already know your name and address. They might know that you do owe money to the IRS. They might have seen a lien filed in the public record showing that so they might be able to give you some pretty specific information. Say, hey, I know you owe this much for 2013, and we want to help you out, so give me your social security number. So be very suspicious when you get calls like that, because like I said, they generally send mail. And, if you're going to get a call from somebody from the IRS, it's because you've already received several notices and maybe you called in, and you're expecting a call from somebody, but usually, they're not going to call you out of the blue like that. So what if you find out that you've already been the victim of identity theft? And a lot of my clients find this out because they start getting notices from the IRS about a return that they never filed or about a refund that they never received. So their first reaction is, what are they talking about? I didn't do any of this stuff. So you should contact the IRS. There's always a telephone number on each notice. You call in, you might have to wait on hold for a while. But you do want to call in, find out what's going on. And if it turns out that, a return was filed and a refund was sent out and you don't know anything about it, you've probably been the victim of identity theft. And what you want to do is fill out an identity theft affidavit. You don't just want to report it to them over the phone because not much is going to happen that way. You actually have to go to the IRS website. You can search for identity theft affidavit and you'll get the form. It's a 2-page form. You fill it out saying who you are, and that you don't have any idea or, whatever information you have about this identity theft. And you want to send that in with like a copy of your driver's license or some other ID to show that you are actually the person that you say you are. And what the IRS will do is process that. They'll put a block on your transcripts, your online transcripts, so that nobody else can look at them. They'll give you a PIN number, personal identification number that you can put on any future returns that you file to make so they know it's definitely you. And if there's a refund or something like that they want paid back or liability, they'll erase that and say, okay, we understand that you're not the person responsible for that. So that's why it's important to fill out that affidavit and send it in and not just report it by phone. You probably also want to report the incident to police and obtain a police report. The police might not be able to do anything about it, but the police report will be useful evidence for you to send to the IRS if they question it and say, hey, how do we know this was not you? You can say, hey, I took it so seriously that I went to the police and got a police report about it. And again, check your credit reports every year. If you think you've been a victim of identity theft, you definitely want to check your credit report because there might be loans and credit cards and stuff out there that you don't know about. And you need to report that to the credit reporting agencies and get those closed down or get those taken off. And I talked before about being on a phone call. It was with the Federal Trade Commission. They were talking about the widespread use of ID theft. And there's a lot of information at this website about different types of scams that you should look out for and what you can do if you're the victim of a scam. All right. So we get to the next topic, which is the Earned Income Tax Credit. So this is one of the biggest poverty fighting programs in the United States. It's bigger than public housing. It's bigger than SNAP benefits, welfare, any of those other programs. So this is money that you can get as a refund from the IRS if you are working, if you have earned income, but your income is low. And if your income is really low, you can get this without even having any dependents in your home. But if you have children in your home or a disabled person, a permanently disabled person that you're taking care of, You can claim them as a dependent on your return, and you'll get some money for those dependents too. So you can claim as many as 3 dependents. And based on your income, you might get a refund. I'm sorry, based on your earned income, you might get as much as $8 or $9 or $10,000 as a refund. And a lot of people depend on this money. They use it to catch up on bills. They use it to pay for unexpected expenses or get a car or a new refrigerator. It can be really a real lifesaver for a lot of people. Unfortunately, it's also the target for a lot of fraud and a lot of tax preparers that I've been talking about at the beginning of the presentation. This is the big tax credit that they're trying to get. So what they're going to do is these false tax preparers are going to put dependents that don't really live with you on the return. They're going to say that you have your own self-employment or business income that you don't really have. In order to get the EITC, which is where they're going to get the most money from. And the thing about the EITC, even if you're working and you don't really pay too much taxes into the system, you don't pay much income tax or don't have it withheld from your paycheck, you can still get a refund. It's money not based on what you pay in, but you can get it as a credit anyway. So most people have qualifying child or dependents when they request the EITC. And so you should understand that the qualifying child has to be legally related to you by blood, marriage, or formal adoption. Or some children that are placed into foster care under state programs, official foster care placement also might qualify. So this means that, it can't be your neighbor's child that you take care of after school. It can't be your cousin. That's not one of the types of family members that are that you can claim. It can be a son or a daughter, grandson or granddaughter. You can claim aunts or uncles, but not your cousins. So there's certain categories of people that you can claim, and you got to be able to show that you're legally related to them. Even if you've lived together and you're really close, you have to be legally related. If you're living with a significant other and you're not married, and maybe that person has a son or daughter that you're not the parent of, then you wouldn't be able to claim that child because you're not legally related to them by blood, marriage, or formal adoption, unless you have formally adopted them. So that's one of the things that you have to look out for. Now, and more importantly, and this is the harder part for some people to prove, the qualifying child has to live with you for most of the year, over 6 months, and be supported by you. And if you can prove that the child lived with you for 6 months or more, usually the IRS will just assume that you're supporting them. So really you have to prove the residency of this dependent. Where did they live? And it has to be your household. Okay, so we have a lot of divorced people, like the husband, maybe the husband, the ex-husband will claim his children, but they're not living with him most of the time. They're living most of the time with mom. Maybe he's paying child support, but if they're not living in his house, under his roof, sleeping in his house for most of the year, then he's not supposed to claim them. They actually have to live with you. And sometimes people get confused about unrelated people living in your household. You can claim a dependent and get a small credit of $500 for taking care of unrelated people in your household. But for the earned income tax credit, it has to be a legal related person that lives with you most of the time. So if your tax preparer is not asking these questions, if they're saying, oh, does anybody in your family have a kid that they're not going to claim, and say, okay, well, let's claim them, and they're not asking about whether they live with you or whether you support them, that's a real sign that some kind of fraud is going on. Okay, Um, well, let me just say, so this is the biggest credit that I used to see kind of scam tax preparers asking for. But lately, in the past year or so, I've been seeing other things, and one of them is a federal fuel tax credit. So if you have a large business that uses a lot of automobiles, say you have a rental car business or something like that, a taxi service, then the federal tax that you pay on fuel for that fleet of cars, you can get that as a credit on your return. But this is, not something for people that are driving for Uber or Lyft, or doing a little bit of driving. This is for people that have a fleet of vehicles, and they're using thousands of gallons of gasoline every year. Um, but I've been seeing tax preparers asking for this credit. They'll say somebody drives for Uber, and then they'll say that they use, 10,000 gallons of gasoline, and they want the tax credit of $30,000, which makes absolutely no sense. And so the IRS flags that right away, and you're going to be probably examined if that's on your return. Um, and the biggest thing is that you have to list all the cars and the VIN numbers and everything like that when you're claiming this credit. And, obviously the taxpayers don't have that information, so they don't send it in. So it gets flagged. And I've seen the IRS say, hey, you are involved in purposeful fraud, and we're going to hit you with a fraud penalty, all sorts of really bad things they've been threatening these people with. So if you're with a tax preparer and they're talking about federal fuel tax credits, then I would really run the other way, because that's not something that most people would be asking for. And I just want to say that because that's something that I've been seeing in the New Orleans area lately. And then also one more point that's not on here that I've been seeing in the last year or two, especially in the New Orleans area. If you're receiving some kind of public benefit, such as a housing voucher or SNAP benefits or Medicaid for your kids or something like that, and you're telling those agencies that you don't have any income, but then you're filing these returns with these tax preparers that claim you have your own business or that you're making a lot of money doing this, that, or the other thing in order to get the EITC or the federal fuel tax credit. Those agencies have a right to look at your tax returns, and they might, and they have been. And so, like, for example, here in New Orleans, the HANO, the Housing Authority of New Orleans, has been asking people to give them their tax returns. And if they see that you have income on the tax return that you're not reporting to them, they want to evict you and end your voucher and get you to pay back money that they say that you owe them. So I've been doing a lot of amended returns for people in that situation so they can preserve their housing vouchers. So you don't want to get involved in that. And that's another danger of filing a false tax return. Okay, so let's just say you weren't able to pay your tax liability for some year, or you had to pay back a refund and you owe the IRS. So the IRS is a very powerful creditor. They can seize your state and federal tax refunds. That should be refunds instead of returns. They can garnish your wages. They can ask your employer to take up to 15% of your wages and send it directly to them. They can garnish and levy Social Security payments and pensions. They can even go in and just take money out of your bank account. They can file liens against you and against your property and the public records that will affect your credit ratings. And they can do all of this without court authorization. Like, most creditors would have to go to court and get a court order to do any of these things. The IRS can just go ahead and do it all by itself. Luckily, there are alternatives. If you have a temporary hardship, you're unemployed, or you're just scraping by, or your kids are taking up all your money, you can call the IRS and ask for what's called currently not collectible status. So your balance is not erased when you do this, but they temporarily stop trying to collect from you. So they won't seize your bank accounts. They won't garnish your wages or anything like that. They will, however, still seize any federal tax refunds that you might get in future years. So if you think, you're in a temporary situation, you think maybe, in the future you might be able to pay off or start paying a monthly payment or something like that, then you probably want to just call in and ask for currently not collectible status. They're going to ask you for your income and expenses, so have that information ready for them. If you think you can make payments, then you can get an installment agreement, and you can set this up online at the IRS website. You can fill out a form and mail that in. You can also do it over the phone, but I wouldn't recommend it because that's the most expensive way to do it with fees and all that. So the installment agreement, it's a monthly payment plan, and the IRS will probably tell you what they would like you to pay. And in order to understand this, you should understand that the IRS does have a time limit on collecting liability. They have 10 years from the date that liability is assessed to collect it. So this doesn't mean when you file your return or anything like that. The IRS may examine you. They may, not assess you until years later. So when it's finally assessed, they then have 10 years to get it. So right when it's assessed, they'll allow you a 10-year payment plan. So your monthly payment might be pretty low. But what they will take and the amount of time they will take will decrease as they get closer and closer to the time that your liability is going to expire. But like I said, you can ask for payment plans that can be 6 years, 7 years, 8 years long, and may be affordable to you. And as long as you make those payments, the IRS will not do other things like take your bank accounts, take money out of your bank account or levy or garnish you. And then lastly, this is for people, this is something that you see advertised on TV all the time where these tax firms will say that they can settle your tax liability for pennies on the dollar. What they're talking about is the offer and compromise. So this is when you come to a settlement with the IRS to pay less than what you owe. But the IRS is not going to do this unless you prove to them that you cannot pay off the entire amount. So you're going to have to give them a lot of financial information. You're going to have to give them bank statements, paycheck stubs, things like that to show that you have no extra income, that you have no assets that you can liquidate to pay them off. But if you're able to do that, then the IRS may agree to take less than the entire amount that they're owed. So we actually do a lot of offer and compromises here because a lot of my clients are elderly or disabled, living on a fixed income, don't have assets. So that's something that's available for my clients, and I do that a lot. But if you're younger and still working and it's possible that you may make more money in the future, or if you have an asset like an extra house or retirement accounts or something like that, then the IRS may look at that and say, hey, we think you can pay the entire amount. So you do have to think about it a little bit before submitting an offer and compromise. But if you want to go that route, the forms to do that are at the IRS website. And I believe that is the end of my presentation. If anybody has any questions, let me see if I can.
Yeah, Paul, it doesn't look like we have questions right now, but we like to give it a minute because there is a bit of delay on Facebook, if that's all
Okay.
right. And if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, I'll talk about some of that information assistance after this presentation. Let's see, you can go to the LSBA's Find Legal Help page. It's located on the LSBA's homepage. It can help you diagnose your issue and provide customized referrals and information, particularly the Civil Legal Navigator. This is a program that walks you step by step through various legal issues and can really help you when you need it. And if you'll go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the access points. There we go. So Please also check out our legal help access points to get assistance for your civil legal needs. These access points are physical computers or booths that allow users to access a spectrum of services and information, get customized legal information and referrals, see if you qualify for legal aid, schedule meetings with a legal aid attorney, and attend virtual court in participating jurisdictions. Access points are currently available in libraries in Lake Providence, Faraday, and DeRidder. One is in the LaSalle Community Action Association in Harrisonburg, and one was just placed in the St. Bernard Complex building in Chalmette. For more information, please visit the link listed on this site. And let's just check to see if we have any questions. Let's give it one more minute.
Okay. And so I guess I'll talk a little bit about what we do here at the tax clinic. We talked a little bit at the beginning of the presentation, but we have 2 lawyers here at the tax clinic, and what we do is we help people whose returns are being examined by the IRS. Maybe they need to send in some evidence or, for the EITC eligibility, some birth certificates and school records and medical records to prove residency. We can help with that kind of thing. And once the IRS makes a decision, you can appeal it to the IRS. You can also appeal it by filing a petition with the tax court, the U.S. tax court, and we also help with that. We help people with collection alternatives if they do owe money. We help people get current on collectible status or get into installment agreements. And if we think you're eligible, we can do an offer and compromise for you. So these are all the things that I've been talking about, that you should do, we could also help you with if you're income eligible for our services. And we are a statewide project, so it doesn't matter where you are in the state of Louisiana, you can call in. And I'm going to give the toll-free number for Southeast Louisiana Legal Services in case you're in another part of the state. Our toll-free number is area code 877-521-6242. And then our direct dial is, if you're in the area, your local number, if you're in the area, is area code 504-529-1000. And generally, you'll get a message asking you to leave a message about your particular legal issue. So just say that you have an IRS tax issue, and then someone will call you back to do eligibility screening and get you on your way.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. We really appreciate it. I do want to ask you all to save the date for the next law talk. That'll be on April 9th from 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. It's going to be on child custody and grandparents' rights. Again, thank you, Paul. It doesn't seem we have any questions, and really appreciate you taking your time out of your day today.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right,
Yeah.
bye.
Bye-bye.